I'm going to move on to the whipped back stitch. So I'm actually not going to tie off. I'm going to start on my next stitch. If that's where you're at too, you can start that now. You could tie off this if you're starting a new color, but I'm going to actually work with the same color and then whip my back stitch with a different color. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to create a basic back stitch. So same thing as your original back stitch. You can change the length of your stitches to change the look of your back stitch or your whipped back stitch. I'm going to just stick with the same width so that you can see the comparison between what a whipped and what a regular back stitch look like. I think I split my strands there a little bit. So we want to go right next to our original stitch. Sometimes we can share the same hole for the whipped back or for the back stitch. I try to share the same hole. If you end up one stitch away, you're going to end up with a little gap. So you kind of want to go down the same hole that your back stitch used, or your past stitch used, pardon me. So we're just following the line, creating the exact same back stitch we originally did. Trying to keep our stitches nice and even. This whipped back stitch is a little bit more forgiving, and you'll see why in a second. Just gonna fix that didn't lay as flat as I'd like it to. So if your stitches aren't laying flat, like say one of your strands has separated and it's kind of sticking out like that one, just pulling it up. And then what I like to do is run my thumb, like my nail, along the thread, and it helps kind of group them back together properly. And whichever one is maybe not, the tension isn't quite right, it'll often pull back into the grouping and you'll pull the tension out. So you can stitch all the way to the end and then I'll meet you back there. I think we've got a pretty good handle on the back stitch now. So I'll meet you back when you're here. Okay, so now we've created our back stitch, and now it's time to whip our back stitch. So you can come up, if you are sticking with the same color, you can come back up just on the outside of here and whip from this direction. If you're changing colors, or if you are keeping the same color, you can come up at this end. It just depends on what kind of project you're working on. If you're working on a project where you've done a huge long line and you're sticking with the same color, you may just want to come up right there to save thread or tying off, and you can just come up right next to it. If you're changing colors, I just like to work from this side to this side. That's just like a habit thing. I'm going to change colors so you can really see the whipped portion of this. So I'm going to come up back right here once I've changed my floss color. And you can, it's optional to change your floss color. All right, so I'm going to come up right here where I started. And then I'm literally just whipping. So this needle won't go back down through the floss or through the fabric until the very end. So I'm just weaving my floss underneath each stitch. So basically wrapping it around. And I start from the bottom typically, like I go underneath. Direction doesn't actually matter, you can whip coming down from the top or you can whip from the bottom. And it basically just creates a really nice solid line. So if you're using the same color, it'll create like a really nice raised solid stitch. It can be used on tons of different things: stems, lines, outlines, pretty much anything you need a solid line for. It's really nice because it's similar to something like a stem stitch, or but it really creates a very raised effect. It's probably the thickest stitch because you're doubling up your strand. So right now we've basically got 12 strands off because we've got 6 for our back stitch and 6 for our whipped. So you're just continuing that. You don't need to pull too tight when you go around the whipped part, and you kind of just want to make sure that your strands are laying as flat as possible to create a nice flat look. So lots of people use this at Christmas time for like a candy cane shape. And then to finish, you're just going to stitch right back down at the end of your back stitch. And you finished it. So this is often used for lettering, like specifically for even like a cursive, or tiny lettering where you've done a back stitch and then you want to make it really smoothed out, all in the same shade. Yeah, so that is your whipped back stitch. We'll be moving on to the stem stitch next.